while we deal with the patch management and the infra side of things, there are still some areas which are very high on detection have traditionally been. And for example, vulnerability, we might say that, okay, detection and patching can be done in this out of the box fashion, and the approach can be different. Things like detecting secrets, right? And secrets is one of my favorite areas. So I wanted to know from you, what would you do differently? Things like secrets management or secrets detection are very high on having checkpoints, particularly in a very dynamic and ad hoc environment, which is true for many of us who are developing and scaling today. What would you do differently in such an environment to particularly tackle secrets when you're scaling fast?
So before I, answer that question, there is a promise that DevOps brought for businesses, right? Not IT, but businesses, that you could have the factory model of shipping features, right? Which means there's an assembly line, right? There was a time when the assembly line for staging was different and for prod was different, right? So it's almost like you have crafted whatever you're making and it is ready with like staging data. And at the time of some, approval process, a human will say that, yeah, now it's ready for prod. And when it is sent on the prod assembly line, that is when it will get the production data, right? You can apply the same principle here, right?
Okay.
First of all, developers mostly now do their testing on prod, right? For the teams that have to move fast. Now, some people say, no, we don't do that. I understand. Then you are in a regulated industry, right? Then you're not really solving it how majority of the world is solving. And if you are testing in prod, they don't really differentiate between a functional test case and a non-functional test case around security, right? Because developers are being incentivized to ship features, time to market. In that case, the only useful intervention, right, that a security team can do in prescriptive nature is they give them a guide that this is where you put your secrets. Could be a configuration file, could be like runtime injection as like an environment variable. But whatever it is, that best practice has to be enforced. Then the burden of checking where the secret is and if something sensitive is going to get deployed in production, right, that comes on IT. But if we do the prep work, and can you do it on day one? No, you have to work with the developers, but that's the whole point of DevOps, right? Break down the silos. So if you do it like that, then whatever is the ideal best practice for that team, org, whosoever, whatever that organization is, on that you can put some controls, detection after the fact, pre-commit hooks, whatever developers are okay with. And if the development leadership, the engineering leadership is with you, then it's very useful for them to even say that, yeah, this is part of our coding standard, which everyone aspires for, right? The engineering teams really understand that we should always try and have consistent coding standards. That's one. This is the part where you are kind of changing the hearts and minds, right? But to be sure that secrets do not get leaked to production, the only sure shot way is to have different secrets. And since we are deploying using assembly line, a CI/CD pipeline, the should never be provided by developers. Either they don't have access to it, or ideal cases like you have something which is generating the secrets, no human is ever looking at it, and that will just solve your rotation as well, right? You can kind of do any workflow around rotation, revocation that your compliance demands. But step one is to make sure detection is powerful by making it very, very specific, because the teams understand that, right? And step two is to make sure you completely isolate or eliminate the potential leakage, that there is a coding standard, it was being enforced, but someone still bypassed it, something still got hard-coded, ended up being in this thing. And I'll give you a couple of examples where it really, really happens. Even now, people build applications for the backend API, and now you have that backend as service where, front end is made as single page app. A lot of front end developers have no idea that when they package their secrets, those secrets are just in some JavaScript file, like a main.js, right? That's one. Sometimes teams are like, you know what, using this front end, we are going to generate a mobile app. Or using this front end, we are going to generate a progressive web app, because they appear to be more interactive, more fluid for the end customer, the UI UX bit, right? If those front end folks don't know, or if you outsource your front end, which happens in a lot of teams, then this bit can break. And which is why it's really, really critical that the staging secrets or the dev test secrets are different for devs, and they never really get to see the production secrets. It's doable. It's absolutely doable, because you control the pipeline.
That is totally doable. I mean, in
Yeah.
fact, I was waiting for you to come to that part. Many times in security, we would, go with the idea of preventing it altogether. It was also there in one of our previous episodes where we're talking about secrets management.
Okay.
Where you should actually not be handling secrets,
Yeah.
leave alone handling it securely and that ways. But since we are talking about, security coming in at the time where deployments are now already happening fast and they may not have this kind of a control in place. What I understand from what you're saying is still go with detection using the approaches that you mentioned, but try and, soon move into something where you prevent this altogether.
Yep.
From happening. Do you think that the cloud native solutions are good in some way, or should be leveraged, like for example, secrets managers and things like that from the get-go when they're starting off? Is that any better to be able to help with speed?
Absolutely. To get started, there is no point in doing anything. I know many teams that end up deploying like a HashiCorp vault in like a 3 cluster high availability manner, which I think is an overkill for most people. You should start with whatever you don't have to manage. And the cloud native secret managers tend to be expensive, so people try to optimize there. But usually there's always another service in AWS. It's called like a param store, which is part of the SSM, which allows for encrypted things to be kept, but is not as expensive as the AWS Secrets Manager. Right?
Okay.
Fundamentally, you need a place where encryption will happen at rest. You will have an API to be able to interact with it, and you won't have to manage it. Because if you're not managing it, nobody's waking you up at 4 a.m. saying that, hey, pipeline is failing because the secret is not getting injected. Go fix that infra, right? You should not create more infra debt to support your security use cases as part of that. Because then it's like, right, like in encryption, the master key is always plain text. So there's a lot of effort done to make sure that the master key is never exposed. And it's called turtles all the way down. Like some people say, no, but let's encrypt that master key. So to encrypt the master key, there'll be a master key. So,
that's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. I think it's an understandable, out of the box approach when your teams are building at that speed.